The arrival on Valora, the great throne chamber of Queen Velashra, was silent. Only the slow sound of metal boots echoed through the shining crystal floor. The alien guards moved aside, their weapons glowing in blue light. A single human soldier walked forward, his armor burned and marked from battle, the surface of his helmet reflecting the bright white light above. The queen sat on her high throne made of silver roots and crystal veins. Her golden eyes followed the human closely around her. Banners of the Valoran Empire moved gently in the cold air. The hall was filled with fear and confusion. No one had ever seen a human this close. He stopped in the center of the hall, silent and still. The queen's generals stood ready with plasma lances. The alien courtiers whispered among themselves. They had fought against the human fleet for months, but suddenly the human ships had stopped firing. Only this single warrior had landed. "Who are you, human?" the queen demanded, her voice sharp and full of authority. "Why do you come before me alone?" The soldier did not answer. He only lifted his head slightly. The visor of his helmet showed her own reflection. The queen's wings twitched in irritation. "I am speaking to you," she said coldly. "You will answer your queen." Then the human spoke. His voice was calm, deep, and filled with strange confidence. "You called for peace," he said, "so I came." A murmur spread through the chamber. The queen's tail flicked in surprise. She had not expected this. "Remove your helmet," she ordered. No one hides their face in the presence of the queen. For a moment he did not move. The guards stepped forward, weapons ready. The queen raised her hand to stop them. Her eyes locked on the soldier. The tension was heavy like the air before a storm. Slowly, the human reached up and touched the locks of his helmet. With a soft hiss, the seals released. A faint mist of air escaped. He lifted the helmet away. The hall went completely silent. The human's face was young, but there was something ancient in his eyes. His skin was pale, and glowing marks ran down his neck like living light. The aliens gasped. Some fell to their knees in shock. The queen stood from her throne, her heart beating fast. The marks on his skin were not random. They were sacred symbols of her people. The same patterns carved into the walls of her oldest temples, those marks, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. They belong to the first ones, to the gods who made our world. The human looked at her with calm eyes. "Not gods," he said softly, "just men." The queen felt the ground shift beneath her. Everything she had been taught since childhood was breaking. The ancient legends had always said the first ones vanished among the stars, leaving behind knowledge and power. But this human carried their light, their symbols, their blood. One of her generals shouted, "Lies, all lies!" He raised his weapon toward the human. "He is a trick, a spy." The human turned his head slowly. His eyes glowed faintly white. The weapon in the general's hands melted in an instant, dropping to the floor like liquid metal. "If I wished to harm you," the human said in a calm voice, "there would be no palace left to protect." Fear spread through the hall like a wave. The queen took a step down from her throne, trying to keep her voice steady. "Then why are you here, human?" He looked at her, eyes full of sadness more than anger. "To remind you," he said, "of what your kind promised long ago." Thunder rolled outside, but the sky above Valora was clear. It was not weather. It was the sound of something vast in the orbit above. The queen turned toward the windows. The clouds split, revealing enormous shadows moving through the sky. Human warships, black and silent, hanging above her world like mountains of metal. Their lights glowed red and steady. Her voice trembled. "This is not a meeting," she whispered. "This is a warning." The human stepped forward and placed his helmet under his arm. His voice was quiet, but every word carried power. "No, Your Majesty," he said, "this is a reminder." The hall fell into deep silence again. The alien stood frozen between awe and fear. The queen could not take her eyes off him. For the first time in her life, she felt small. The human's eyes looked toward the stars above through the crystal ceiling. His tone turned almost gentle. "We once walked beside your ancestors," he said. "Now we have returned to see what became of the galaxy we left behind." The queen's wings folded slowly, her voice low. "And what did you find?" The human looked at her, the faint blue light on his skin glowing brighter. "A kingdom built on forgetfulness," he said, "and a queen who has forgotten why she was crowned." Outside, lightning flashed across the empty sky. The alien banners fell still, and for the first time in many centuries, the Queen of Valora felt afraid. The human turned slightly, the light from above reflecting off his armor. "This is not the end," he said softly. It is only the beginning. The shock of recognition. The Queen of Valora stood frozen, her golden eyes fixed on the human before her. The chamber felt smaller now, as if the air itself bent around him. The soft light from the ceiling crystals danced over his armor, catching every scar and burn mark from the battles he had survived. She wanted to speak, but her voice refused to come. Centuries of royal pride, power, and belief were breaking inside her heart. Her people had stories of the first ones, tall beings of flesh and light who built the first stargates, who taught them language, who disappeared beyond the veil of time, and now one stood in front of her. The human looked calm, his face unreadable, but behind his steady eyes there was something deeper, something that carried pain and memory older than her empire. "Your ancestors remembered," he said softly, his voice echoing like a song through the great hall. "But your leaders forgot." The queen stepped closer, her silver cloak brushing the floor. "You speak as if you know our history better than we do," she said. "Trying to sound in control, I do," he replied simply. "Because I was there." A gasp moved through the crowd like a wave. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons, but the queen raised her hand to stop them. Her wings trembled slightly. "That is impossible," she whispered. "The first ones lived thousands of cycles ago." The human looked at her calmly. "Time bends differently for us," he said, "and for some of us, it does not end at all." Her heart raced faster. Every word he spoke carried a strange weight, something that felt like truth. His glowing markings pulsed softly with every breath, matching the rhythm of the palace energy around them. She looked at his face again, trying to find any trace of a lie. But all she saw was certainty, and a sadness that cut through her soul. "If what you say is true," she said quietly, "then why have you returned now?" He turned his gaze upward, toward the tall glass dome that revealed the dark sky of Valora. "Because the galaxy has forgotten balance," he said. "You have turned faith into empire, knowledge into chains." The queen frowned. "We built our civilization from their teachings," she argued. "We honor the first ones with every law we make." The human shook his head slowly. "You built it on fear," he said, "and fear cannot last forever." Silence again filled the chamber. The queen's generals exchanged worried glances. None of them understood the power this man held, yet they could all feel it. It was not magic. It was something older, raw, real. Then the human raised one hand. The lights in the chamber flickered. The alien soldiers stepped back as symbols appeared in the air, glowing blue and spinning slowly, ancient shapes that none of them had seen except in sacred texts. The queen gasped, recognizing the pattern immediately. "That is the seal of creation," she whispered. "The lost mark of our beginning." The human nodded. "You once used it to open the first gates between worlds," he said. "Now you use it to close your borders." Her heart sank. The truth struck harder than any weapon. For generations her empire had feared outsiders. They had destroyed planets to hide their secrets, believing themselves divine, and yet, here stood a being who carried the light of those they once called gods. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked in a trembling voice. "Because I want to see if there is still hope in you," he said. The queen blinked, surprised. "Hope?" "Yes," he replied, stepping closer. "Because when the first ones left, we left a choice. A seed inside every species that could guide them forward. But when power replaced wisdom, that seed began to die." Her breath grew heavy. "And you think I can change that?" He looked at her directly. "I think you are the last who can." The chamber doors suddenly burst open. Dozens of guards rushed in, led by a high commander with silver armor. "Your Majesty," he shouted, "the human fleet is moving. We are surrounded from every side." Gasps and cries filled the air. The queen turned to the soldier. "Do they attack?" "Not yet," the commander said. "But they have locked all our communications. Every channel is silent." The queen's eyes moved back to the human. His face remained calm. "Your fleets tremble because they fear what they cannot see," he said. "But humanity did not come to destroy." "Then why are your ships here?" the commander shouted, his hand on his weapon. The human turned toward him slowly. "To witness," he said. "To see whether the Queen of Valora chooses memory or madness." The queen raised her hand to silence her guards again. Her voice was softer now. "And what if I refuse your offer?" The human's eyes glowed brighter. The symbols in the air began to fade. "Then the galaxy will burn again," he said, "as it did once before." For a long moment the queen said nothing. The sound of the wind outside the dome was the only thing that moved. She could see the reflection of the dreadnoughts in the glass, silent giants waiting for her word. The human lowered his hand. "You still have a choice," he said quietly. "But you will not have it for long." Then he placed his helmet back under his arm and bowed slightly. "I will return when the second sun rises," he said. "Decide by then." He turned and walked toward the great doors. The guards parted in silence, his steps echoed like thunder, and when he left the chamber, the queen felt the weight of 1,000 years pressing on her heart. She sank back onto her throne, her wings folded tightly around her body. The light above flickered once more, and she whispered to herself, "Who are you, human? And what have you brought to my world?" The human's secret, the night on Valora was long and restless. The queen could not sleep. The stars outside her window looked brighter than ever, but they felt like eyes watching her, judging her. The human's words echoed in her mind again and again. "You built your empire on fear." She rose from her throne chamber and walked alone through the silent corridors. The air was cold and heavy. Her reflection followed her in the mirrored walls, but she barely recognized herself anymore in the distance. She could still see faint red lights in the sky. The human fleet, silent, patient, unmoving. It was as if time itself was holding its breath. Her advisor, Elder Marin, joined her quietly. "My queen," he said softly, "the council is in panic. They believe this human is not one being, but a weapon sent to break our spirit." The queen looked at him with tired eyes. "Perhaps he is both," she said, "a man and a message." The elder bowed his head. "What will you do when he returns?" She didn't answer immediately, her wings folded tighter. "I will ask him the truth," she whispered, "even if it destroys me." When the second sun began to rise, the horizon burned with orange and blue. The ground trembled slightly, a sign that something powerful was approaching. The queen stood once again in her throne room waiting. The great doors opened, and the human entered, still calm, still silent. His armor gleamed faintly in the early light. Behind him, the massive shadow of his ship hovered above the palace like a sleeping god. The queen stepped forward. "You said I have a choice," she said. "But a choice between what?" He stopped before her, his eyes glowing faintly again. "Between truth and comfort," he said. "Between history and myth," she frowned. "Then tell me the truth." The human nodded slowly. "Your people once served the first ones," he began. "They were scientists, explorers, dreamers. But when the first ones vanished, your ancestors took the knowledge we gave and turned it into chains." Her voice grew sharp.
"Lies," she said. "Our ancestors were guided by light." He looked at her with sad eyes.
"Light can burn too," he said. "When we left, we did not disappear. We went home to a place beyond your maps. Humanity grew, evolved, and learned to shape matter with thought. But when we looked back at the stars we once shared, we saw only empires built on pride." She stared at him, speechless. "You make it sound as if your kind were gods." He shook his head. "Not gods, just survivors." The queen stepped closer. "Then why return now?" "Because the balance is breaking," he said. "The galaxy is falling into silence. Planets vanish without reason. The same force that erased the first ones is waking again." Her eyes widened. "You mean something destroyed them?" He nodded slowly. "Something we called the void. It consumes knowledge, memories, life itself. The more you believe you control it, the faster it spreads." The queen felt a chill crawl through her spine. "And you think it will come for us next?" He looked around the throne room, the ancient carvings glowing faintly as if reacting to his presence. "It already has," he said quietly. "Your people just don't see it yet." For a moment, the queen could hear only her own heartbeat. The carvings on the walls began to shimmer, revealing hidden symbols beneath the stone. The human turned toward them, placing his hand on one of the glowing marks. The entire hall trembled. A hidden pattern appeared across the floor, circles of light connecting like a web. The alien guards stepped back, shielding their faces from the brightness. "What are you doing?" the queen demanded. He looked back at her. "Unlocking the memory your ancestors sealed away." Suddenly, images appeared in the air. Giant human ships, ancient and beautiful, floating beside the first Velaran colonies. Together they built gates of light that opened the path between galaxies. They were allies once, brothers of the stars. Then the image changed. Flames, betrayal, war. Velaran fleets firing on human ships. Screams of broken alliances. The queen's heart twisted in pain as she saw her own flag among the destroyers. "Enough," she whispered. Please stop. The light faded slowly. The human lowered his hand. The air smelled of dust and electricity. She sank to her knees, trembling. We did this, she whispered. My ancestors betrayed you. He looked down at her. His voice gentle but firm. Not you, but your blood remembers. She raised her head, her voice breaking. Why show me this pain? Because pain is truth, he said, and only truth can save what remains. Silence filled the room again. The queen looked up, tears in her golden eyes. Then what must I do? The human looked at her for a long moment. Remember who you were before you were a queen, he said. And remember what your people were before they were rulers. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. When the third dawn rises, the void will arrive, he said quietly. If you wish to live, you must stand beside humanity, not against it. Then he walked out, leaving behind only the echo of his steps and the light fading from the walls. The queen stayed on the floor, staring at the old carvings that now seemed to move like living stars. Her empire was built on lies, and one human had broken them all. Outside, the sky darkened again, as if the universe itself was waiting for her next move. The queen's fear. The palace of Valora no longer felt like a home. It felt like a cage made of light and glass. The queen stood at the edge of her balcony, watching the twin suns rise over the silver horizon. The air shimmered with tension. Her people were afraid not of war but of truth. Every corner of her empire whispered of the human's arrival. Some called him a ghost, others called him the last starborn. Priests claimed the marks on his skin were divine signs, while soldiers feared he was the messenger of their end. Inside the throne room, the queen sat alone. The light from the crystal ceiling had dimmed, flickering like a dying flame. She had ordered her council to leave. She could not bear more lies. Her hands trembled as she held an ancient relic, a golden disc engraved with the same glowing patterns she had seen on the human skin. It pulsed faintly in her grasp, as if alive. Elder Marin entered quietly, his voice low. Your Majesty, the energy readings from the lower city have changed again. Entire districts are losing power, and the sky itself has begun to darken. The queen turned to him. Is it the humans? He shook his head slowly. No, my queen. The readings do not match any known technology. Her heart sank. Then it has begun, she whispered. Before he could reply, the ground beneath them trembled. The great columns shuddered, and the lights flickered out completely. For a moment, everything was swallowed in blackness. Then faintly, a soft sound echoed through the darkness, a whisper, like distant wind calling their names. The queen's wings twitched. Do you hear that? Marin's eyes were wide. It's coming from the deep vaults, he said, from the ancient core. The queen moved quickly through the shadowed halls, her guards following closely. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Strange symbols glowed along the walls, symbols that had not been seen for centuries. They reached the vault gates, massive stone doors sealed since the founding of Valora. A low hum vibrated through the air, and thin cracks of light appeared between the stones. Open it, the queen ordered. The guards hesitated, but obeyed. The doors groaned as they moved, revealing a vast chamber inside. At its center hovered a black sphere, slowly turning, surrounded by strands of dark mist. It pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. The queen stepped closer, her voice trembling. What is that? Marin's voice was barely a whisper. The ancient records called it the heart of silence. As she stared at it, the whispers grew louder, not from outside, but from inside her mind. Words that didn't belong to any language she knew, yet she understood them. We are coming, she stumbled back, clutching her head. It speaks, she gasped. Suddenly, a bright light burst from the sphere. The guards fell to the floor screaming, and Marin shouted in terror, It's feeding on our energy. The queen reached for her communicator, but it was dead. Every device around them flickered and died. The black sphere pulsed faster, as if it was waking up. Seal the chamber, she cried, now. The guards activated the emergency locks, but the light still seeped through. The queen felt it touch her skin like ice, and then she heard his voice again, not from the room, but from within her mind, the human's calm, steady voice. You cannot destroy it. Her heart stopped for a moment. You, she whispered, how are you speaking to me? The voice answered softly, because the void has already found you. She turned, but he wasn't there. Only the echo of his presence remained. The light around the sphere faded slowly, leaving the room in darkness once more. The guards rose shakily, pale and weak. Marin looked at her, his eyes full of fear. "My queen, what was that?" She stood still, her wings trembling. "A warning," she said softly. "And a promise." She turned away from the vault and walked back toward the light above. Her mind was spinning. She had doubted the human, but now she felt the truth of his words like fire under her skin. When she returned to the throne room, her generals awaited her. One of them, Commander Ron, stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said, "our scouts report strange distortions near the planet's edge. Entire star routes are vanishing." The Queen looked up toward the glass ceiling. The twin suns were flickering behind a thin black veil. "The void is here," she whispered. "And we have no time left." A moment of silence followed. Then she turned to her officers, her voice hard and steady. "Prepare a signal to the human fleet," she ordered. "Tell them the Queen of Valora requests parley." Her generals stared at her in disbelief. "You mean to trust him?" Roan asked. The Queen met his eyes. "I mean to survive," she said coldly. Outside, lightning flashed through the strange dark sky. But it wasn't weather. It was space itself tearing open. The first touch of the void had come to Valora, and for the first time, the Queen of Valora felt not just fear, but the shadow of extinction. The memory code. The palace trembled under invisible waves. The stars above Valora flickered like dying candles. The Queen stood at the center of her war chamber, her reflection shining off the glass table that displayed the map of her empire. Systems were blinking out one by one, not from attack but from something deeper, something eating through space itself. Every mind in the room carried fear, but none dared speak it aloud. The Queen's eyes were cold and focused. "Open a channel to the human flagship," she commanded. Moments later, the holographic form of the human appeared before her, tall and calm, light reflecting off his battle-worn armor. His voice was steady. "You have seen it, haven't you?" The Queen nodded. "The void," she whispered. "It's real." He gave a small nod. "It always was," he said. "But now it is awake." Her wings folded tight behind her. "You said there was a way to stop it." "There is," he replied. "But you won't like the cost." The Queen stepped closer to the projection. "Then tell me, human, what is this cost you speak of?" He looked at her silently for a long moment before speaking. "It is the code," he said. "The memory code left by the first ones, locked inside the DNA of every human. It was meant to be a failsafe, a key to reset dying galaxies." Her eyes widened. "You mean your blood carries their technology?" He nodded. "Not technology," he said softly. "Their memories, their thoughts, their will." The Queen stared in disbelief. "Impossible. How can flesh hold the knowledge of gods?" "Because they made us," he said quietly. "We are their continuation, their final creation. Humanity was never meant to rule the galaxy. We were meant to remember it." The Queen turned away, her hands trembling. The room was silent except for the hum of the failing lights. "Then why come to us?" she asked. "If you hold such power, why not fight the void yourselves?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Because the code is not complete," he said. "Half of it was lost when your ancestors betrayed us. The other half lies buried beneath your capital. Inside the relic your priests call the Heart of Silence." Her breath caught. "The same relic that awoke last night," he nodded. "The void uses it now. It feeds on memory, on knowledge. It was once our tool. But your ancestors turned it into a weapon, and now it hungers for everything that remembers." The Queen felt her knees weaken. "You mean my people doomed us all?" The human stepped forward through the hologram, his face close to hers. "No," he said. "You still have a choice." Her voice was faint. "What must I do?" He raised his hand, showing a small glowing crystal suspended between his fingers. "This contains the human sequence, the missing half of the memory code. But to complete it, you must merge it with the Heart of Silence." She shook her head. "If I bring that relic near the palace core, it will destroy everything." His eyes softened. "It might," he said. "But it could also restart the system of creation, sealing the void forever." The Queen stared at the crystal, the faint glow reflecting in her eyes. "You want me to risk my entire world," she said quietly. He nodded. "I want you to save it." For a long moment, she said nothing. The palace around her groaned again, and faint whispers filled the air, voices from the dark, lost souls of her people who had already been taken by the void. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Send me the coordinates," she said. "I will do what must be done." The hologram flickered, and the human's calm voice echoed one last time. "Remember, Queen of Valora, the code does not destroy, it restores." The projection faded, leaving only silence. Moments later, the Queen stood inside her private transport, the relic chamber glowing around her. She held the golden disk, the heart of silence, in her hands. The faint voice of the void whispered at the edge of her thoughts, "Give in, surrender, forget." But she pressed the glowing crystal against the disk. The moment they touched, light burst through the chamber. Her vision filled with images not her own. She saw ancient humans walking beside her ancestors, building cities among stars, laughter, peace, hope, and then fire. Betrayal, screams, tears rolled down her face. The past was burning through her mind. Rewriting her memories, the power surged through her veins. Her wings glowed with light for the first time in centuries. Outside, the sky turned silver. The human fleet lit up with energy signatures across the orbit. The void screamed through the clouds, its black tendrils trying to pierce the light. The Queen cried out, but her voice became one with the sound of the storm. The relic exploded in light, sending a wave across the sky from the depths of space. The human fleet answered, their ships glowing with the same sacred patterns, merging into the light that spread across the system. Then everything went silent. The Queen opened her eyes slowly. The chamber was calm. The relic lay in pieces, glowing faintly like embers. Marin rushed inside. "My Queen," he gasped. "The sky, it's clear, the stars, they're back." She stood weakly, her voice trembling but firm. "The code remembered," she said. "And so did I, above Valora." The human fleet held its position, waiting, watching. The balance had returned for now, but deep in the silence beyond the edge of the galaxy, something still stirred, something that had not been erased, only awakened, and for the first time the Queen wondered if humanity's secret was a gift or a curse yet to come. The Queen's choice. The skies of Valora were calm again, but the calm felt strange, unnatural, like silence after a scream. The Queen stood on the balcony of her palace, her armor faintly glowing with the energy she absorbed from the relic. Her body still burned with light, but her heart felt heavier than ever. Below her, the city was awakening. People gathered in the streets. Staring at the restored sun, some cheered, others wept. They did not understand what had happened, only that the darkness had passed. But in the Queen's mind, there was no peace. She could still hear the echo of the void's last whisper before it vanished. "You cannot erase what you are." Behind her, Elder Marin approached carefully. "My Queen," he said softly, "the Council waits. They demand to know if you allied with the human." She turned her golden eyes toward him. "Yes," she said simply, "I did." He bowed his head low. "Then may the stars protect us," he whispered moments later. The great chamber of the Council filled with light as she entered. Every noble and general rose, their faces mixed with fear and awe. The mark of the relic still shone faintly across her skin, lines of blue light running along her neck and arms. "Your Majesty," Commander Roan spoke first, his voice sharp, "you brought alien code into our sacred core. You risked our entire world." She raised her hand, silencing him. "And yet we live," she said calmly. "You should be thanking the human." Not fearing him, another council member rose. "But how can we trust them? They hold power beyond understanding. They are the descendants of the gods." Her wings unfolded slightly, casting shadows across the hall. "They are not gods," she said firmly. "They are what we were meant to be." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to her, then the massive doors opened, and every voice stopped. The human stepped into the hall, his armor shining with faint light, the same light that now pulsed within her. The guards raised their weapons, but she lifted her hand. "Stand down," she ordered. He stopped a few paces away, his expression unreadable. "You activated the code," he said. "I felt it." She nodded. "The void is gone. For now," he replied. "But it will return, it always does." Her eyes narrowed. "Then tell me, human, what comes next?" He looked around the chamber, at the aliens who stared at him like a living myth. "Now you must choose," he said quietly. "Join us and rebuild what was lost, or remain apart and watch it all fall again." Roan stepped forward, his voice full of anger. "And if we refuse?" The human turned his gaze toward him. The faint light in his eyes grew brighter. "Then the void will find you first," he said, "because fear always calls to it." The Queen looked at him, her heart torn. If I join you, she said, what happens to my people? They survive, he said simply, but not as they are now. Her voice trembled. You mean we will lose ourselves? He shook his head. No, you will find who you were before you forgot. Before empires, before pride. The chamber was silent. Only the faint hum of the palace energy filled the air. The queen stepped closer to him, their light merging faintly. Why me? She asked. Why not another ruler, another world? He looked at her with something like sorrow. Because you still listened, he said, and that is rarer than power. Outside, the sky began to change again, not with darkness, but with motion. Dozens of human ships descended slowly, not for war, but for unity. Their engines left trails of light across the sky, painting new constellations above Valora. The queen turned back to her council. Tell our fleets to stand down, she ordered. There will be no more walls between our stars, Ron protested. You would open our gates to them? She looked at him with fire in her voice. Yes, she said. Because the only way to fight the darkness is together. The human inclined his head slightly. Then the choice is made, he said. The chamber lights dimmed suddenly, and a single projection appeared in the air above them. A star map, vast and infinite, millions of worlds, each connected by thin lines of light. This, the human said, is what we once were. A network of unity, a web of living memory. The first ones called it the celestial chain. Humanity intends to rebuild it, but we cannot do it alone. The queen stared at the map, her heart pounding. Each light represented a world, a voice, a promise, and she understood what he meant. I will stand with you, she said, her voice steady. But not as your subject, he smiled faintly. Then stand as our equal, he said. As the first of many to remember, the council murmured in shock. But the queen felt something deep inside her stir, a new strength, a new purpose. The human stepped back, his voice soft. Prepare your people, Queen of Valora, when the stars align again. The chain will awaken. As he turned to leave, she called after him. And when it does, what then? He paused at the great doors, his figure bathed in silver light. Then, he said, we will see if the galaxy deserves another chance. The doors closed behind him, and the queen looked up at the endless stars above. For the first time, they did not feel cold or distant. They felt alive, waiting, listening, and deep within her heart, she knew her choice had changed more than her world. It had changed the fate of the galaxy itself, the unveiling of humanity. The night sky above Valora was brighter than ever. Millions of stars shimmered like burning diamonds. The queen stood at the highest tower of her palace, the wind lifting her silver cloak as she stared at the horizon. The human fleet hung silent in orbit, their lights pulsing in rhythm, as if the stars themselves were breathing. The human had left hours ago, yet his words still echoed in her mind. When the stars align again, the chain will awaken. The queen closed her eyes and reached out with her thoughts. She could feel something new beneath the surface of her world. A hum, deep and ancient, not from machines but from life itself. The memory code was alive within her, connecting to every heartbeat across her empire. Elder Marin approached quietly behind her, his voice soft. The people are gathered, my queen. They wait for your word, she nodded slowly. Then let them see the truth. As she stepped forward, the palace lights dimmed, and the skies above began to shift. The stars moved in ways they never had before, aligning into vast circles and lines of light stretching across the heavens. Gasps echoed from the city below. Every being on Valora looked up in awe. Then a beam of white light fell from the heavens and struck the queen's palace. The ground vibrated with power. The light was not destructive, it was alive. It poured into her, through her, and into the very soil of her world. The queen's markings glowed bright blue. The ancient runes on her wings lit up like rivers of fire. Her voice rose, clear and strong. People of Valora, today we remember who we are. The crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on her as the sky continued to transform. Across the galaxy it began one by one. Planets that had been silent for ages lit up. Beams of light connected them like threads of silver energy. Human ships appeared from the shadows between worlds, each one carrying the same glowing symbols. They did not come to conquer, they came to unite. The queen's voice echoed through every communication channel, her words carried by the human network. The first ones are not gone, she said. They live through us, through memory, through unity. In the orbit above, The human flagship opened its lower bays, releasing thousands of small crystalline drones that spread through space, weaving invisible energy between worlds, forming what looked like a web of living stars. The celestial chain was awakening. The queen felt her heart race as the energy flowed through her. She could see visions in her mind, images of other rulers, other species, all watching the same miracle from their skies. Humanity had revealed itself not as destroyers, but as keepers of the forgotten light. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the edge of the system. A black scar opened in space. The void was trying to return. The human fleet moved instantly, their ships aligned in formation. Beams of light firing not as weapons but as signals. The celestial chain reacted, sending waves of energy through the network. The queen felt it through her veins, and she raised her hands to the sky. Adding her power to the signal, her voice joined the human commanders across the stars. "You will not take this galaxy again," the void screamed, a sound not of noise but of despair, as light devoured its darkness. The scar closed, leaving only silence when it was over. The galaxy glowed like a living organism. Stars pulsed gently, connected by the luminous pathways of memory. The queen fell to her knees, exhausted but alive. Elder Marin rushed to her side, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's over," he whispered. "You did it." She smiled weakly. "No," she said softly, "we did it." At that moment, the human flagship descended. Its shadow covered the palace, and then the human himself appeared before her once more. He was no longer wearing his battle armor but a simple black uniform, his markings glowing faintly beneath his skin. He looked at her with calm pride. "The chain is restored," he said. "The galaxy remembers again." The queen rose to her feet, her golden eyes reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. "Then this is the beginning," she said. He nodded. "Yes," he said. "The first ones would have called it the dawn of memory." She smiled faintly. "And what will humanity call it?" He looked toward the stars, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "Home!" The queen followed his gaze, her wings shimmering with silver light. Together they stood beneath the glowing sky, watching as countless worlds awakened for the first time in countless ages. Every being in the galaxy felt the same heartbeat. The celestial chain pulsed once, twice, then stabilized, a web of light stretching across infinity. The human turned to her, his voice calm. "From this day forward, Valora is no longer a world of shadows," he said. "It is part of the chain forever." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "And humanity?" He smiled, the stars reflected in his eyes. "We were never gods," he said. "We were the reminder that no light should ever be forgotten." The queen looked up at the radiant heavens, tears shining in her eyes. The galaxy had been reborn from the edge of nothingness, and so ended the silence. The era of the first ones was gone, but the age of memory had begun.